The media is so unfair to Muslims. Well, why is that? And more importantly, what can we do about it? So, what's the problem? Well, here it is. Lots of false and misleading stories about Muslims in the British press. Research from Lancaster University has shown that for every one positive or neutral reference to Muslims in the press, there are 21 negative references. The sad fact is that negative stories about Muslims sell newspapers. As Professor Frost from the National Union of Journalists said, one of the best ways to sell newspapers is to pick an other group, and at the moment a good one is Muslims. The other reason why newspapers can write such stories is, well, they can get away with it. Why is that? That's because the regulator, IPSO, that's the Independent Press Standards Organisation, is, well, to put it mildly, totally useless. In the 5 years since it's been formed, IPSO has been a complete failure. Despite thousands of complaints, it has been completely ineffective as a regulator. It has issued no fines to newspapers and not launched any investigations into any of the false stories that have been published. Of all the complaints under the category of discrimination, 99% have either been rejected by IPSO or not even considered. Yep, you heard that right. 99% straight in the bin. In fact, it's not even independent and doesn't hear third-party complaints or group complaints, which is important because it means that if you are unhappy about an article written about Muslims in general, you can't complain to IPSO. So, when Trevor Kavanagh used Nazi-like language in a column in The Sun to say, quote, "What will we do about the Muslim problem then?" IPSO took no action. Oh, and Kavanagh was sitting on the IPSO regulatory board at the time. Another problem is the lack of representation of Muslims and indeed people from the BME communities in film, TV and drama. Research from Leicester University found low levels of diversity in people working in the British film industry, especially at the level of film directors. Even when we do see black people on screen, they are often in stereotypical roles, such as drug dealers or criminals. The same can be said for Muslim portrayals. A good example of this is in the opening scenes of the British hit TV series The Bodyguard, which features a Muslim woman in hijab on a train with explosives strapped to her, i.e. a would-be suicide bomber. Now, what impression does that give of British Muslim women in hijab today, at a time of rising hate crime where often the victims are Muslim women in hijab? So, what can we do about it? The Leveson Inquiry was set up to investigate the wrongdoings of the British press. This led to a Royal Charter on Press Regulation in 2013 and the setting up of a new Leveson-compliant regulator called Impress. This would correct a lot of the problems with IPSO at the moment. Unfortunately, none of the major press have joined it, and the government has refused to implement the piece of legislation that would incentivize them to do so, and it's called Section 40. So MEND, along with campaigning bodies like Hacked Off and Victims of Press Abuse, call upon the new government to implement Section 40 without delay and give us a free, fair and accountable press. The second thing we can practically do is to support initiatives that treat minorities fairly. A good example of this is Byline Times, which is an independent journalism-driven newspaper set up in 2019. As an example of how its reporting is different, in its very first edition on the front page, it had a story about Islamophobia. It's also featured a number of articles with positive representations of British Muslims. Finally, we call upon the broadcasting industry to start showing positive and realistic portrayals of Muslims and people from BME communities. You can find out more at our dedicated website, Get Out and Vote. Here you'll find our manifesto with all our policy pledges. You'll also be able to find out which of these the parties signed up to and which your local candidate signed up to. Please visit www.mend.org.uk/Get Out and Vote. Vote smart. Think MEND.